It was a quiet Saturday morning. The kind where the sun spills gently through the blinds and the world feels peaceful for once. I was sipping my coffee in the kitchen when I heard it. A low rumble. The kind of sound that makes your stomach twist before your brain even figures out why. I stepped closer to the window overlooking my driveway. And that's when I saw it. A tow truck. Parked halfway up my driveway. Engine idling. Chains clanking. And right behind it, standing proudly with her clipboard and an expression that could curdle milk, was our HOA president, Mrs. Daniels. I froze for a second, my mug hovering halfway to my mouth. Then I muttered, "You've got to be kidding me." I walked to the front door, trying to stay calm. Because with the HOA, you never show anger. They feed on it. As I opened the door, the tow truck driver gave me a sheepish wave. Mrs. Daniels didn't even acknowledge me. She was pointing toward my garage and talking to the driver as if I wasn't even there. That was my first red flag. "Excuse me," I called out. "Can I help you two with something?" Mrs. Daniels turned slowly, her red lipstick catching the morning light like it was part of her armor. "Good morning, Mr. Collins," she said in that sugary tone she always used right before saying something outrageous. "We've received multiple complaints about an unauthorized vehicle being stored on your property." I blinked. "Unauthorized vehicle? That's my truck." "Yes," she said, smiling like a cat about to pounce. "And your CC and RS state that commercial vehicles are not permitted to be parked in visible areas." "My truck is in my garage," I said. "How could it possibly be visible?" She didn't answer. Instead, she gestured toward my closed garage door with her clipboard. "We have reason to believe it's in there. You've been warned before." I felt my jaw tighten. "Warned for what? Parking in my own garage?" She turned to the tow truck driver. "You can proceed." That was it. My calm went straight out the window. I stepped between the driver and the garage door, holding my hands up. "You touch that door and I swear." The driver raised his palms. "Hey man, I'm just doing my job. They told me the vehicle's not compliant. Doing your job doesn't include breaking into private property," I snapped. He looked uncertain now. But Mrs. Daniels didn't flinch. "This is community property, Mr. Collins. The HOA bylaws clearly." "No," I interrupted. "This garage is on my deed. You don't get to open it, touch it, or send a tow truck onto my property." There was a long silence. Just the low rumble of the tow truck engine and the distant sound of someone's sprinklers ticking away. Then Mrs. Daniels sighed dramatically. "Fine," she said. "But I'll have to file a violation report, and this will result in daily fines until you remove that vehicle." I could feel my pulse pounding in my neck. That truck, it wasn't just a vehicle. It was my work truck. I'd spent years building my small carpentry business, saving up every dollar I could to finally buy it. It was clean, quiet, and fully compliant with every local law. The only reason she wanted it gone was because she thought it looked industrial. In her perfect HOA world, everything had to look like a magazine photo. I took a slow breath. "Mrs. Daniels, I'm asking you nicely to leave my property. You and your tow truck." She stared at me like she was deciding whether I was worth the trouble. Then she smiled again. "We'll be back with an enforcement officer." And just like that, she turned on her heel, her heels clicking against the driveway. The tow truck driver hesitated, then shrugged and backed out of my driveway, leaving me standing there in disbelief. I stood there for a long time, watching them leave, the rumble of the engine fading into the distance. When the quiet settled back in, I realized my hands were shaking. That woman had just tried to have my truck towed, from inside my own garage. That's when something in me snapped. I walked back inside, grabbed my phone, and started recording. If they wanted a fight, I'd make sure there was a record of every single thing they tried to pull. I filmed the empty driveway, the closed garage, even the timestamp on my phone. Then I went inside the garage and pointed my camera straight at the truck. Still sitting exactly where I'd left it. Not blocking the road. Not parked illegally. Just there. A man's truck, in his own garage. I uploaded the video to a private cloud just in case. Because something told me this wasn't over. And I was right. 2 days later, I got an envelope from the HOA. Violation notice. Fine, $500. Reason, unauthorized vehicle storage. My blood boiled. I called the HOA office immediately, but of course, they couldn't discuss active violations without scheduling a board meeting. So I left a message. Then I called Mrs. Daniels. Straight to voicemail. I stared at my phone for a long minute. Then I grabbed my keys and drove straight to the HOA office. The receptionist looked terrified the second I walked in. I just got this notice, I said, setting the envelope on the counter. And I need to speak to whoever signed it. She checked the paper nervously. That would be Mrs. Daniels. Of course it would, I muttered. She's not in right now, the receptionist said. Would you like to leave a message? I smiled tightly. Sure. Tell her I'll be filing a complaint with the sheriff's department if she tries to send another tow truck to my home. The woman blinked. The sheriff? Yes, I said. For trespassing. And attempted theft. Her mouth opened slightly, but she didn't say anything. I left before she could. That evening, I installed a security camera above the garage door. And another by the driveway. I didn't trust them anymore. Not after seeing the way Mrs. Daniels had looked at my house, like it was hers to control. 3 nights later, around 11:30 p.m., my phone pinged. Motion detected. I opened the live feed. And there it was. A pair of headlights slowly rolling up the street. A white pickup with a tow light rigged to the back. Not a full tow truck this time, something smaller, quieter. My chest tightened. The truck stopped right in front of my house. Then the driver's door opened. A man stepped out, wearing a reflective vest. He walked up my driveway, looked around, and stopped at my garage door. I hit record. He reached for the handle. That's when I hit the garage lock from my phone app. The metal bolt slid into place with a solid click. He tugged on the handle again. Locked. He stepped back, confused. Then he turned toward the street and made a motion with his hand. Another vehicle's headlights flicked on, this time, a sedan. And even through the grainy night vision, I could see her. Mrs. Daniels. Sitting in the driver's seat. Watching. My blood went cold. I grabbed my phone and dialed the sheriff's office. Non-emergency line, what's your situation? The dispatcher asked. There's a trespasser on my property, I said quickly. He's attempting to open my garage. I have video footage and the HOA president is here, watching from the street. The dispatcher asked for my address, told me to stay inside, and said an officer was on the way. But I couldn't just sit there. I cracked open my front door and recorded again, zooming in on the scene. The man was pacing now, talking to Mrs. Daniels across the street. Then he walked back toward his truck. I could hear his boots on the pavement. Mrs. Daniels stepped out of her car, her phone in hand, muttering something I couldn't make out. Then she noticed me filming. Her eyes widened. She froze for half a second, then hissed something at the man. They both jumped into their vehicles and started to pull away. That's when the sheriff's car turned the corner. Blue and red lights washed over the street. Mrs. Daniels' sedan hesitated, then rolled forward slowly. The tow guy panicked and tried to back up too fast, scraping the curb. The deputy got out and waved his flashlight. Stay where you are! I stepped out into the yard, phone still recording. The deputy walked up, asked me what happened, and I told him everything, from the first tow attempt to tonight. When I showed him the video from the camera feed, his eyebrows shot up. He turned to Mrs. Daniels, who was standing beside her car now, arms crossed. Ma'am, he said, did you authorize this man to enter his property? She lifted her chin. I'm the HOA president. We have the right to enforce community guidelines. The deputy's tone went flat. You do not have the right to enter private property or attempt to remove personal belongings. That's trespassing. Her face went pale. "This is a misunderstanding," she stammered. "We were just verifying." "Verifying by trying to open a locked door?" the deputy said. "That's attempted entry." The man with the reflective vest looked like he wanted to disappear. Mrs. Daniels tried to recover. "I'm sure we can resolve this civilly." The deputy looked at me. "You want to press charges?" I hesitated. Because part of me wanted to. But another part, the one that knew how these HOAs worked, wanted to make sure everything was documented first. "I just want an official report filed," I said. "For now." He nodded. "We'll take statements." Mrs. Daniels didn't say a word. Just stood there in the glow of the sheriff's lights, her power slipping away minute by minute. And as they wrote the report, I noticed something in her eyes. Not fear. Not guilt. Something else. A quiet calculation. Like she was already planning her next move. And in that moment, I realized this wasn't over. Not even close. Because people like Mrs. Daniels don't stop when they lose once. They double down. They look for loopholes. And as the deputy drove away that night, leaving me in the quiet hum of my security lights, I knew exactly what was coming next. She'd try again. She'd find another angle. And this time, I'd be ready. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of my phone buzzing on the nightstand. It was early. Too early for anyone to be calling unless something was wrong. I groaned, rolled over, and grabbed the phone. Unknown number. I hesitated for a second before answering. "Hello? Mr. Collins?" a stern voice said. "This is Deputy Alvarez from the County Sheriff's Office. I wanted to let you know that the incident report from last night has been filed." Relief washed through me for a second. "Thank you, Deputy. I appreciate that. There's more," he said. "I also spoke with your HOA president this morning. She's claiming you interfered with an HOA enforcement action and recorded her without consent. She's trying to file a counter-complaint." I sat straight up in bed. "Wait, what?" "She said she'll be contacting her attorney." "Just giving you a heads up, sir." My heart sank. Of course she would. Mrs. Daniels wasn't going to let it go. "Thank you for the call," I said, trying to sound calm. As soon as I hung up, I threw the covers off and went straight to my computer. I opened the video footage from last night, the one that clearly showed her standing across the street while that guy tried to open my garage. Her face was visible. The license plate, too. There was no mistaking what happened. And yet, she was twisting it against me. I spent the next hour backing up every piece of evidence I had: cloud storage, USB drives, even my work laptop. By the time I was done, I could feel that familiar tension building in my chest again. The HOA wasn't just trying to find me anymore. They were trying to intimidate me. And if I knew Mrs. Daniels, this was just the beginning. Around noon, I stepped outside to grab the mail. There, waiting for me like a curse on paper, was another envelope from the HOA. No return address, but I knew the logo immediately. I opened it right there on the porch. Immediate violation notice. Unauthorized surveillance equipment installed on property without board approval. I almost laughed. They were fining me for the security cameras. The same cameras that caught them trespassing. I looked up at the lens above the garage, the one still blinking steadily, recording everything. "Yeah," I muttered. "Come and get me, Mrs. Daniels." By evening, I couldn't shake the uneasy feeling in my gut. The neighborhood was too quiet. No one waved when they passed by. No one stopped to chat like they usually did. It felt like everyone knew something. Like there was a whisper moving through the cul-de-sac, one that had my name in it. At sunset, I saw Mrs. Daniels again. She was walking her little white dog past my house, sunglasses on, pretending not to look at me. But she slowed down, just enough to glance toward my garage. Then she pulled out her phone, snapped a photo, and kept walking. I felt my stomach turn. That night I barely slept. Every sound made me jump. A creak, a car door, a dog barking 2 streets over. It all felt like something was about to happen again. When morning came, I was exhausted. I decided to go into work early just to clear my head. As I backed out of the driveway, I noticed a car parked at the end of the street. Dark blue sedan. Windows tinted too dark for a resident vehicle. I couldn't see who was inside. I drove off, pretending not to notice, but I checked the mirror more than once. The car didn't move. When I got to my workshop downtown, I still couldn't shake it. Was it paranoia? Or was she actually sending someone to watch me? By noon, I made up my mind. If Mrs. Daniels wanted to play legal games, I'd bring my own lawyer into this. I called my friend Michael. He's a property attorney I'd worked with on a renovation deal a couple of years back. He picked up right away. "Hey, man. Long time no talk. What's up?" "Mike," I said, "I think my HOA's trying to get my truck towed. From my own garage." He paused. "Say that again?" I told him everything. The tow truck, the violation notices, the attempted entry, all of it. By the time I finished, he let out a long sigh. "Yeah," he said. "That's a classic abuse of authority. I've seen this before. They're testing you, seeing how far they can push. Can they find me for security cameras? Not unless it's explicitly prohibited in your community bylaws," he said. "Do you have a copy of your CC and RS? "Yeah. Email them to me. I'll take a look." I did that immediately. An hour later, he called back. "Your documents don't say anything about cameras. They can't find you for that." "Good," I said, exhaling. "Because I'm not taking them down." "Keep recording," he said. "If they trespass again, I'll make sure it ends up in front of a judge." That was the first time I felt a little better. Like maybe I wasn't crazy for thinking something was off. When I got home that evening, the blue sedan was gone. But there was something else waiting. A folded note, taped to my front door. No envelope. No signature. Just 5 words written in thick black marker. "Stop fighting the HOA. Please." I stared at it for a long time. The handwriting wasn't Mrs. Daniels. Too rough. Too hurried. I looked around, scanning the street. Empty. Quiet. The same stillness as before, the kind that felt almost staged. I took the note inside, slipped it into a drawer, and locked it. Then I sat at my kitchen table for a while, just listening to the silence. Every instinct in me screamed that something bigger was coming. Later that night, my phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't the sheriff or a spam caller. It was a text from an unknown number. "Enjoying your garage tonight?" My blood ran cold. I ran to the window. The street was dark, but there, near the corner, I saw movement. A figure tall, standing just outside the glow of the street lamp. Watching. I grabbed my phone, switched to the security feed, and zoomed in. There he was. The same man from the other night, the one with the reflective vest. Only this time, he wasn't wearing one. He was just standing there in a hoodie, hands in his pockets, staring at my house. I hit record again. After a minute, he turned and walked away. Disappeared down the street. I called the sheriff again. The dispatcher recognized my voice immediately. "Same location?" she asked. "Yeah," I said. "He's back. I've got video again. We'll send a patrol to check it out." By the time they arrived, the man was gone. But the deputy did find something near the curb. A small orange sticker, the kind towing companies use. Only this one had been peeled off, crumpled, and left on the ground. It had my address written on it. The deputy looked at me, his jaw tight. "You sure this is just an HOA thing?" "I don't know anymore," I said quietly. He nodded, told me to keep the footage, and promised to add it to the previous report. When he left, I stood outside under the streetlight for a long time. The night air felt heavier than usual. Like the whole neighborhood was holding its breath. The next morning, I got another HOA letter. This one wasn't about fines. It was an invitation. Mandatory compliance hearing, Tuesday, 7 p.m., HOA Community Center. It was signed by the entire board. including 3 names I didn't even recognize. Something about it felt off. Michael told me to attend, but to record everything. So I did. When Tuesday came, I drove to the community center just as the sun went down. The parking lot was almost full. I didn't even know that many people showed up for HOA meetings. When I walked inside, the chatter stopped. Every eye turned toward me. Mrs. Daniels sat at the head table, smiling. "Mr. Collins," she said sweetly. "Thank you for joining us." There were cameras, microphones, even a projector. The air felt thick with something I couldn't name. She gestured for me to sit. I did. Then she tapped her papers and began. "This hearing has been called to address multiple violations and behavioral concerns regarding Mr. Collins' conduct toward the HOA board." I frowned. "Behavioral concerns?" "Yes," she said smoothly. "Harassment, defamation, and recording without authorization. We also have reports of aggressive behavior toward our contractors." Contractors. She meant the man who tried to open my garage. I clenched my fists under the table. "That man trespassed on my property," I said. "I have proof." Her smile didn't move. "Yes, and we'll review your evidence shortly. But first." She nodded toward the projector. The lights dimmed. Then a video started playing. Footage from someone's phone, shaky, zoomed in from across the street. It showed me arguing with the tow truck driver the first day this all started. From an angle that could only have come from a neighbor's window. Mrs. Daniels' voice echoed softly in the dark room. "This kind of aggression is unacceptable in our community." Murmurs filled the room. I could feel the stares. The judgment. When the lights came back on, she looked straight at me. "Do you deny behaving in this manner?" I stared back at her. "No. But you're leaving out why it happened." "Mr. Collins," she said, voice dripping with false sympathy, "you've become a disruption to the peace of this neighborhood. We simply want what's best for everyone." "What's best for everyone?" I said. "Or what's best for you?" A few people gasped. Mrs. Daniels leaned back in her chair, smiling again. "I think we're done here for tonight," she said. "The board will deliberate privately and issue a decision in writing." I stood up. "This isn't over," I said quietly. Her eyes gleamed. "I know," she whispered. When I left the room, the murmurs followed me out into the parking lot. And as I opened my truck door, I noticed something taped to my windshield. Another orange sticker. Same type as before. Only this one had 2 words written in thick black ink. "Final warning." I looked around. The parking lot was empty. Just the faint hum of the streetlights. I peeled the sticker off slowly, my pulse pounding in my ears. When I looked back toward the building, I saw her standing in the glass doorway. Mrs. Daniels. Still smiling. Watching me. And somehow, I knew she wasn't finished. Not even close. The night after the meeting, I couldn't shake her stare from my mind. That cold, perfect smile reflected in the glass door as I drove away. The words on that orange sticker, "Final warning," burned in my thoughts until I finally fell asleep, if you could even call it that. When the morning came, I felt like I hadn't rested at all. Something in my gut told me it was the calm before the storm. And I was right. At around 9 a.m., there was a knock at my door. Sharp. Deliberate. The kind of knock that means business. When I opened it, 2 uniformed officers stood there. Between them was Mrs. Daniels. She looked smug, clutching a folder to her chest. "Mr. Collins," one of the officers said, "we have a court order from the HOA's legal counsel allowing them to perform a property inspection regarding multiple code violations." I blinked, stunned. "A what?" Mrs. Daniels spoke softly, as if she were doing me a favor. "It's standard procedure, Mr. Collins. If you have nothing to hide, you'll have no issue with us taking a quick look." I felt my chest tighten. "Not without my lawyer," I said. The officer glanced at his partner. "That's your right, sir. But if you refuse, we'll have to note that you're obstructing a lawful inspection." I stared at Mrs. Daniels. She didn't look angry this time. She looked satisfied. She'd found her loophole. I stepped back, hands shaking slightly. You can wait on the porch. I'm calling my attorney. Michael picked up on the second ring. Mike, they're here. With cops. They say they have a court order to inspect my property. He swore under his breath. Don't let them in yet. Asked to see the order? I turned back to the door. May I see the order? The officer handed me a paper. I read it carefully, and my stomach dropped. It wasn't a court order. It was a temporary injunction request. And signed. Unstamped. Just a printed draft. This isn't valid, I said. It's not signed by a judge. The officer frowned and looked at Mrs. Daniels. She hesitated, then smiled thinly. It must be a clerical delay. The court is processing it. Michael's voice in my ear was sharp now. Close your door right now. So I did. I shut it and locked it. Through the glass, I saw Mrs. Daniels' expression twist, the first crack in her composure. I spoke through the door. You're trespassing again. Leave my property, or I'll call the sheriff. The officer stepped back. Mrs. Daniels hesitated, then leaned forward just enough to whisper something I couldn't quite hear. Then they left. The whole exchange lasted less than 5 minutes. But it changed everything. Because now, it wasn't just petty fines or parking disputes. It was war. That afternoon, Michael filed a cease and desist letter to the HOA and personally delivered a copy to their office. By the next morning, the letter stopped. The phone calls stopped. Even the whispers around the neighborhood seemed to fade. For a few days, it was quiet again. Too quiet. Until one night, 3 days later, I woke up to a loud bang. It came from the garage. My heart jumped. I grabbed my phone, turned on the security feed, and there it was. The side door of my garage was wide open. And inside, moving through the shadows, a figure. Not Mrs. Daniels. Someone else. I couldn't see his face, but I recognized the build. The tow truck guy. He was back. I grabbed a flashlight and ran outside, phone in hand, still recording. The night air was cold and heavy. I swung the flashlight toward the garage. Hey! I shouted. The man froze. Then bolted toward the back fence. I ran after him, but he was fast, jumped the fence, and disappeared into the darkness before I reached him. The garage smelled like oil and dust. But my truck was still there. I circled it with the flashlight, scanning for damage. That's when I saw it. A small metal device, no bigger than a phone, attached just under the rear bumper. A GPS tracker. My hands started shaking. I ripped it off and held it up, staring at the blinking red light. My mind raced. They weren't just trying to tow my truck anymore. They were tracking it. I called the sheriff again, and this time, they sent a full patrol unit. They took the tracker as evidence. And for the first time, the deputy didn't just sound sympathetic. He sounded angry. This isn't HOA business anymore, he said. This is criminal. We're opening an investigation. By the time they left, it was past 3 in the morning. I sat in the driveway under the buzzing streetlight, exhausted but wired. Somewhere in the distance, a car engine started. I looked up just in time to see a pair of headlights flicker on, down the street. Mrs. Daniels' white sedan. She was sitting there again, parked and watching. But when the deputy's cruiser started backing out, she drove off. The next day, the neighborhood felt different. People actually talked to me again. A few even stopped by quietly to tell me they'd seen the tow truck before, parked near my place late at night. One neighbor, Mr. Grant, even handed me a thumb drive. I think you'll want to see this, he said. It was footage from his doorbell camera. It showed the same man from before walking up my driveway a week earlier, holding what looked like a clipboard and some tools. Mrs. Daniels was standing near the curb, talking on her phone. That was all the proof we needed. Michael took it straight to the sheriff's office. 2 days later, I got the call. They'd arrested the man who planted the tracker. A contractor, hired off the books by the HOA president. When they searched his truck, they found another tracker and a small envelope with my address on it. And inside that envelope, cash. A lot of it. The deputy didn't say how much, but his tone said everything. A week later, Mrs. Daniels resigned. No explanation. No apology. Just a neatly typed letter sent to every mailbox in the neighborhood, stating that she was stepping down for personal reasons. The HOA board went silent after that. No fines. No violations. No orange stickers. Just silence. The kind of silence that comes when people finally realize they'd pushed too far. I still live in that house. The cameras are still up. The truck's still in the garage, right where it belongs. Sometimes I still catch myself checking the feed late at night, just to be sure. Old habits, I guess. And sometimes I think about her, Mrs. Daniels, and wonder what went through her mind when it all came crashing down. Maybe she thought she was protecting her perfect little community. Or maybe she just liked the power. Either way, she learned the hard way that some people won't be bullied, not by rules, not by fines, and definitely not by fear. Because sometimes, standing your ground isn't just about keeping what's yours. It's about reminding people where the line is. And making damn sure they never cross it again.